Hi, Gemini, and welcome to your January 2024 horoscope. Happy New Year! I hope you had a really nice December, and I hope you're excited for January. January has a really interesting event, which is Pluto entering Aquarius. We'll get into a little bit more detail as to what this means for you a bit later in the horoscope. Another aspect that's quite prominent in January is the sextile between Saturn and Jupiter, which will be happening all month long. Saturn is in a water sign and Jupiter is in an earth sign. And the fact that it's a sextile represents a little bit more of an easy aspect between the two. So I really see January as a month where you are focusing on what it means to be human. You're focusing on the physical needs of being a human. Food, sleep, having shelter, and also focusing on the emotional parts of being a human. Let's get into January and more day-to-day what you can expect. On January 1st, Venus in your 7th house is squaring Saturn in your 10th house. You value your relationships immensely and want to spend time and energy making them better. But at the same time, you have a lot of responsibilities in your career that are asking you to spend time and energy there as well. So at the beginning of the month, you might really feel at odds with these two, and you might be really trying to find a balance. On January 4th, Mars enters your 8th house. With Mars entering your 8th house, you might be experiencing more passion in your intimate relationships. You might be experiencing more assertiveness and more boundary setting in your intimate relationships. And this can go in both positive ways and also in both negative ways. And actually, later in the month, on January 11th, the new moon in Capricorn will also be happening in the 8th house. So the 8th house is quite highlighted for you this month, Gemini. So the sun and the moon will be in Capricorn, while Pluto will also be in Capricorn. And even though Pluto is almost 9 degrees away from the sun, which is quite a bit, it is still in the same sign, and the sun will continue to get closer to it as the month goes on. So I would still say that this new moon has some Plutonian energies to it already. We also have a really interesting aspect during this new moon between Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. Mars is sextiling Saturn in your 10th house, and Saturn in your 10th house is sextiling Jupiter in your 12th house. You are beginning a new phase in your intimate relationships. And because Pluto and Mars are part of this equation, it's learning about asserting your power and your boundaries in your intimate relationships. Saturn and Jupiter in this new moon bring in the 10th and 12th house into the conversation as well. The 12th house is our inner world and our mind, and the 10th is our career. So it could be during this time that the things you're learning with your career, the things that you're learning about who you are internally and the things that you believe are helping you set boundaries in your intimate relationships and helping you show up differently in that part of your life. On January 14th, Venus in your 7th house is sextiling the South Node in your 5th house. The South Node has been in your 5th house since November 2023. And since November 2023, you've been learning to drop any hobbies that you do in order so that others like you. It's time to do hobbies that you like and you enjoy. And with Venus sextiling the South Node on this day, it might be that your partner is helping you and encouraging you to step more into these hobbies and spend time doing them. Venus continues traveling through your 7th house, and on the 19th of January, it squares Neptune in your 10th house. Because it's a square aspect, it might be a little bit more of an intense day. And again, we see your house of relationships and house of careers highlighted again. So there's really this conversation this month between how much of yourself do you give to your partner and how much of yourself do you give to your career. You might be getting a little bit disillusioned in your career, perhaps failing to see reality and getting a little bit carried away with your hopes and dreams there. So if anything happens on this day, just take it with a grain of salt. Allow yourself to think about it before jumping to any conclusions. Finally, we reach the big event of January. On January 20th, we have Sun and Pluto conjunct. They are conjunct in your 8th house, literally at the last degree of Capricorn. Just a couple of hours later, the Sun will enter Aquarius and your 9th house. A day later, on the 21st, Pluto will also enter your 9th house. So there's a lot happening on this day, so let's just break it down one by one. From the 20th onwards, you are focused a little bit less on your intimate relationships and zooming out a little bit more and thinking about yourself again, thinking about traveling, perhaps studying something, expanding your belief system even. And because literally a day later, Pluto is also entering this house, you are really starting a 20-year period when you're learning about how powerful your belief system can be, how purposeful and meaningful it can be to expand and consider all sorts of cultures, all sorts of walks of lives and lifestyles. So for the next 20 years, you'll really be exploring your power and your influence there. So there's no rush to get everything done on these 2 days. Pluto is in your 9th house already between March and June of 2023. So look back if there was anything major happening during those months. There might be a repetition of that on these 2 days. On January 23rd, Venus enters Capricorn and your 8th house. So we talked earlier in the month that you have Mars in your 8th house. So there might be a little bit of asserting your boundaries or a bit more passion in your intimate relationships. And from the 23rd, when Venus enters as well, it's an interesting mix to have both Mars and Venus there. It's this sort of fine balance between, yes, I want to have passion. Yes, I want to assert myself. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I enjoy myself while I'm doing it. So you could possibly be bringing a lot more pleasant things into your relationships and just making sure that you enjoy them while they're there. On the 25th of January, there's a full moon in Aquarius in your 9th house. So the Sun and Pluto are still quite close to each other, about 4 degrees apart. And the moon is in your 3rd house. The sextile between Saturn and Jupiter, remember we talked about it at the beginning of this month, is still happening during this full moon. So again, your career is a part of this conversation. During this full moon, perhaps you are learning something new about your inner strength, and your career is really bringing that out of you. And it's really making you shift and reconsider about your belief system and about who you are in general as a person and how you show up in the world. Later on January 28th, we also have quite a few interesting aspects. Mars squares the nodes, Uranus goes direct, and the aspect that we had earlier in the month between Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter is pretty much the same, but now Mars is replaced by Venus. So Venus sextiles Saturn, Saturn sextiles Jupiter, and Jupiter and Venus are trining. So because we had this aspect with Mars on January 11th, this day might be a bit of a repetition of that, but a little bit easier going because it's now with Venus. Because Mars is squaring the nodes, on this day, you are also being asked to really step into your courage and do the scary things. The nodes represent where we need to grow and move towards, even if it might feel uncomfortable or unnatural. So step into the scary things, do the scary things on this day. It might really help you evolve into becoming an even better person. We close off the month on January 30th with Mars in your 8th house, trining Uranus in your 12th house. There's a lot happening internally in your mind, Gemini. It might not be easy. You've had Uranus in your 12th house for a while, so there might have been a lot of ups and downs. One day you feel amazing, the next you're really struggling with your thoughts and with your mind space. And with this trine with Mars, you might find that being assertive in your relationships is really helping your mind space. It's really helping you keep calm and grounded. So there's a little bit of everything, Gemini, in January for you. There's some focus on your intimate relationships, trying to balance that with your career, and also really working on your inner space, your mind, and taking care of your mental health as well. I hope you are able to enjoy January, take it a little bit easier. And don't forget that you can catch these horoscopes every month. So if you want to catch the one in February, then make sure you subscribe. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon.